This segment with Ashley Hodge of Sic'Em365.com and 365 Sports, brought to you by Richard Carr Motors, the Baylor Bear Hotline, as we discuss Baylor and really the rest of the Big 12 as the tournament starts here in a day or two in Kansas City. Ashley, thanks for your time as always. How many teams in the Big 12? 9 look like they'll get in. But of those 9, how many of them are schizophrenic or bipolar in a way, like Baylor can be, like Texas can be, and like a couple of other teams can be?
Yeah, I would say that, probably you could probably put 7 of those 9 in that category. The league is so good that the only consistent teams this year in league play have been Iowa State and Houston. And then Iowa State, drops a game against Kansas State, a game that they were expecting to win for their season finale in conference play. Houston's been the only really consistent team from start to finish. Kansas miraculously went 15-1 at home, but I think they were like 3-7 on the road or something like that. I mean, it wasn't a great road record for the Jayhawks. So I think all the teams have proven that they're vulnerable against the right opponent. Houston is the one that looks obviously like they have a real good shot at making the Final Four.
Actually, at this point for Baylor, is it less about the seed, which is probably a 3, and more about the draw that they get?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I still think there's a possibility that they'll get a 2 seed. They would have been in the driver's seat for that if they had beaten Texas Tech in Lubbock. But, I mean, you look at their resume, miraculously outside of the big 3 at the top of the rankings, Houston, Purdue, and UConn, who all have 11 plus quad 1 wins and only 3 quad 1 losses and no losses outside of quad 1. Baylor's resume stacks up really well. They have the 4th most quad 1 wins with 9. I'm just looking at their non-conference schedule. Looks like 6 of the teams they played in the non-conference might make the tournament. Cornell's the one that's kind of on the fence, but Seton Hall, Auburn, Duke, Michigan State, Florida are all tournament teams, and they beat 3 of those teams, and maybe if Cornell makes it, that's a 4th. So I think their resume stacks up really well. You look at Iowa State and Texas Tech and Texas and TCU, they have pretty thin non-conference resumes. Obviously, you're competing maybe only against Iowa State for a 2 seed, but that Iowa State-Baylor game may be a pivotal game to determine who gets a 2 seed in the tournament. They got to put somebody on that line, and outside of those 3 that I mentioned earlier, UConn, Purdue, and Houston, no one's really separating themselves from the rest of the pack.
Ashley, I think everybody knew that this wasn't going to be exactly like football as far as the new teams coming in and having maybe a little bit of a struggle early on. We knew Houston was going to be good. It was just a matter of how good would they be. And they've been building for years. Just 3 years ago, meeting Baylor in the Final Four, and Baylor wins the title. But how surprised or maybe what has stood out to you about Houston this season, first year in the Big 12?
Well, they have the best point guard in the nation by a wide stretch. I mean, that helps. I mean, we saw that with Baylor when Baylor had Davion Mitchell. They have a Davion Mitchell-like point guard. And when you got a guy that can just lock up the other team's best player and can make plays down the stretch and, can really make everyone on his team better, that's a huge advantage. Obviously Cryer's played well for them, Roberts. They've got some other dudes. They got a lot of, they got a great team, but they, having the best point guard in the nation is a good start.
So, Ashley, the tournament is about to begin in Kansas City. There's nobody, unless they like Oklahoma State or West Virginia, shock the world. Who would be the first team out of the Big 12?
Oh, as far as, I think Kansas State
right.
is in
They're
a perilous position. Yeah. I mean, they'll have to at least make the final, I would think. Oklahoma did some good work in the non-conference, so I think they're, probably in the field. TCU's one that's got to be a little nervous. You wouldn't want to lose your first game if you're TCU. So the loser of that Oklahoma TCU game might be feeling a little bit nervous come Selection Sunday. Cincinnati's a team that's interesting to me. They're I just think, they're probably going to beat Kansas if you don't have Hunter Dickinson and McCullough. If they're able to beat West Virginia and then, beat Kansas and then, Baylor, that's a tough matchup for Baylor. They're gritty, so if they're able to make a run and, maybe get to the final, then maybe there's a better case for them. But I think for the most part, you're looking at, Kansas State's the one that you want to watch, as far as having a chance to get in the field.
Ashley, do you think Baylor's season is much different if LJ Cryer doesn't leave?
No, I don't. I mean, LJ is a great player, one of the best shooters in the country. But I mean, if you're looking at, Jaden Nunn or LJ Cryer, I don't see a whole lot of difference between them. I think Jaden Nunn plays a little bit better defense. LJ is probably a little more consistent on the offensive end. What makes LJ so good is having Jamal Shedd, take all the ball pressure. If Jamal Shedd gets injured tomorrow and LJ Cryer has to run point, I don't think Houston's going to feel good about their chances to advance far in the tournament. I think Baylor, it's a wash, and I think obviously Jaden Nunn probably is better for the future. So I'm okay with that trade-off.
Jacoby Walter, freshman of the year. Ashley, a lot of hype for him coming in, and he's been a joy to watch. But just your perspective on seeing a full regular season from him, what you hope to see moving forward as well.
Yeah, hopefully he and Eve take a big step up in the tournament, and we can get Langston Love back in the groove. I think Scott said this in the post game with Texas Tech, and I believe it's true. I think it was great for Baylor that Langston got a game under his belt against Texas Tech, and then we'll get another one, at least one in the Big 12 tournament, hopefully multiple games, because you want to get him back in the rhythm, in the flow. And I think, other teams that have had players returning from injury, like the Washington for Texas Tech, that's going to be a challenge. So to answer your question, Jacoby's the type of player that once you get out of the physicality of the Big 12, I think there's been a track record of referees calling it tighter in the NCAA tournament than what they allow in the Big 12 and the Big 10. And if they follow that, trend, I think Jacoby's going to have a lot more freedom and not, be as physically at a disadvantage like a lot of freshmen are, and will really have a chance to shine in the big dance. And I think Eve will be the same way. Those two are athletic, and they play super hard, and they play with a great motor. I think you can't ask more from freshmen than what they gave you this year.
Ashley, what are your thoughts about Rodney Terry last year? Took over a bad situation, took them to the Elite Eight. They were really good by the end, and they're dynamic at times this year. And then all of a sudden, Baylor in the second half and other teams really good in Lubbock. Started out well against Oklahoma, but they are like a lot of teams. They seem to have these ups and downs. Do you think there's any question he'll be back for their first year in the SEC?
I think he'll be back because I think they're going to make the tournament, and it would be probably hard to fire him. They got Trey Johnson coming in, so they got a premier 5-star freshman that's gonna be coming in for them. Although I'll say this: I've never seen a guy care about what other people think more than that guy. Yeah. I mean, he's kind of gotten a reputation for being a whiner. After the Baylor game, complaining about the officiating after they fouled Baylor 15 times in the last 2 minutes. I mean, it was lopsided because of that. I don't know. I think he's, definitely not made any friends with some of his whining behind the scenes that maybe people don't know as much about, like the incident coming to Waco last year. And then also his, complaining about UCF and the downwards horns and, just some things that have probably, not endeared him to other coaches and other people in the league, but what matters most is the alumni and the fans at Texas. And I think they're kind of lukewarm on him. We'll see how he does next year, but I think he'll get another year. All
right, man. Thank you for your time, Ashley. We appreciate it. Ashley Hodge, segment brought to you by Richard Carr Motors, Baylor Bear Hotline here on 365 Sports.